Hello, and welcome to 20 Lore Pro, the competitive resource for Lorcana players who enjoy deck building, competing, and talking all things Lorcana. You can find out more at our Discord community, 20lore.pro/discord, link in the description. Are you looking to take your competitive Lorcana play to the next level? Check out 20 Lore Pro's coaching channel, where we have coaches ready to help you play your best at the next big event. Link in the description. 20 Lore Pro is heading to Charlie's Collectible Show in Stone Mountain, Georgia, June 22nd through the 23rd for their Lorcana 10K tournament. Head on over to Charlie's Collectible Show's website, link in the description, where you can sign up for their 10K tournament. Look forward to watching that in June.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the 20 Lore Report. I'm Hal Brady with 20 Lore Pro, and today we're going to talk a little bit about the challenge in Chicago this weekend, the weekend of June 8th through the 9th of 2024. It's the second North American challenge, and what decks you expect to see there. This will be the first challenge of the newest format with the fourth set of Lorcana. It's going to be the Ursula's Return, and we've got a little data. We've got some tournaments that have already happened. There was the 10K online, the pack tournament. We've got some results from that, and then there's been a few other smaller tournaments, but that's going to be the biggest kind of information dump and decks to go off of leading up to this event. So if you're looking for some information on new decks of the new format, even just for your weeklies or locals, or if you are happen to make it out to the Chicago Challenge, that's what we're going to look at. So no surprise if you've been following along of anything in the metagame so far. It's really been the Ruby Sapphire items deck and the Emerald Steel Bucky deck. So the first place winner of the pack 10K is it's the new Bucky deck. It's pretty much got the most powerful card in the new set, at least from the start. You know, there could be a new breakout star, but just from the jump, it's Diablo, Devoted Herald. The card is so oppressive if it sticks around. If your opponent doesn't have an answer for it, it just sits there. It can sing these removal songs. It can quest for one. It has evasive, and then every time your opponent draws a card while it's exerted on their turn, you draw a card. That's for every single one. So if your opponent plays a Flavor Sham, banishes a Popsicle, and draws 2 cards, you have a Diablo that's exerted, you're going to also draw 2 cards. Against the Ruby Amethyst decks, pretty devastating with all of their Fringe of the Other Side and their Merlin Rabbit triggers. It just makes it to where they can't get ahead on card advantage. And you're not having to spend any ink, you're not having to do anything. You just have to have a Diablo in play. Another thing that makes this deck super powerful is now we have 7 to 8 3-drops you can play on turn 3 after a turn 2 Bucky. I think most lists are only on 3 of the new Floodborn Aladdin. I think I would just go for the full 8 Floodborns on 3 just for consistency purposes. The Aladdin is obviously nothing on the power level as the Diablo, but the other most popular deck in the format, and most likely the other 2 most popular decks in the format, both being Sapphire decks and item heavy decks, this Aladdin, every time it quests, it takes out an item. So this isn't the deck that I've put a lot of time into. I've been kind of messing around with some kind of outside decks that aren't really in the top 3 or 4, just kind of trying to break the format and see if there's any weaknesses or weak spots that people haven't discovered or figured out yet. But I don't know. I would start on 4 of each just to have that turn 3 Floodborn draw. I will say this deck feels just super overpowered when you have a Bucky on turn 2, and quite a bit underpowered when you don't have one on turn 2. Because then you're just kind of in my opinion, it feels like just a kind of a mediocre mid-range deck. But when you have it on curve, especially the crazy, no pun intended, nut draw with the squirrel, you have turn 1, the 1-drop Diablo, you play Bucky on 2, and then on that same turn you immediately shift Diablo. Now you do have to pitch an action card, but your opponent immediately discards a card from the Bucky trigger. So you're not even really down any cards, and then you immediately get to quest and exert it, and then you're going to draw a card on their turn. So you're not really losing any card value at all, and now you have a super powerful board presence that they need to start trying to find answers for immediately. Unless they're able to get like a quick grab your swords or something like that, it's not, they're probably not going to be able to answer it very quickly. And then you just Floodborn on turn 3, on turn 4, on turn 5, and so on and so on. This list, the Jordan Basher list, that did take first place of the 10K, with a couple main deck grab your swords as well. Probably just teched for the mirror. Didn't seem like a bad idea. We don't talk about Bruno, also just kind of a breakout emerald removal spell in with the new set. I'm a big fan of this card. I've been trying a lot of Amber Emerald song decks, and this is definitely a key part of that deck as well. Yeah, this deck super powerful. Not surprised. This is kind of the breakout deck from the first few weeks of the new format. I know a lot of people don't like playing against Bucky, and I think you just kind of have to kind of think outside the box a little bit. I do think Bucky is a little oppressive when you do have it on turn 2, and it does kind of limit some deck building spaces in my opinion, but I've been thinking outside the box and doing pretty well at defeating Bucky decks. It's just finding a deck that can beat the Bucky decks and the Ruby Sapphire items decks, because they kind of play the game on two completely different axes. So one's like super aggressive and attacking your hand, and the other one is super aggressive attacking the board and also just drawing a ton of cards, and they just run away with the game in that aspect. So this is the first place Bucky list. If you've been on Bucky, I don't think this is going to be a bad choice for Chicago. I think it's going to be everywhere. I think it's going to be this deck. It's going to be Ruby Sapphire, and then there'll be some Sapphire Steel decks, and then there's going to be people that have a deck that they believe they can beat all of those. And then a little bit later we'll get into what I believe my choice would be for the Chicago event. So next, let's take a look at the updated Ruby Sapphire list. So this is a list by June. This is not the highest placing list, but it's close. June did make top 8, and the reason I wanted to highlight June's list is because he's topped a couple tournaments already in this new format. So he's been playing this deck pretty heavily and tweaking it and modifying it just kind of as the metagame develops. So I just kind of want to look at June's list, and then we'll look at there was a Monday event also that he topped with the same archetype. So on 3 ice blocks, I see a lot of people either on 2 or 3. I would definitely be just on 4 1 jump 4 brawl. Brawl is just way too good. I in the 2 top decks of the format, it's Flavor Sham and Diablo that you need an answer for, like the 2 most powerful characters that people are playing right now. I would just play 4 brawls, have your answer, don't let it sit there and just run away with the game, because it's the same. Flavor Sham or Diablo unanswered usually just runs away with the game. So I would just be on 4 brawls. I do like to see the move to this Sisu instead of the non-inkable 3-drop, the 1/1 with evasive that banishes a character with 1 or less power. It's got a cool little combo with ice block, but the ice blocks are still powerful with the big Sisu, with the brawls, and of course the Madame Medusas. And that one just being non-inkable, and people are building their decks around not getting blown out at least by the non-inkable Sisu. I like this one. It's harder to deal with. It's going to have high power in the beginning of the game, so it's not going to be a targetable character for Brawl, maybe by the mid to late game for a Medusa, even depending on how many cards your opponent has in their hand. But I kind of like the aspect of it's most powerful when your opponent has all the cards in their hand, and then later in the game it gets a little weaker, but they're also running out of cards. So it's just, I don't know, it's really cool play design, in my opinion. But a quest for 2, and it's inkable. It's going to be harder to get off the board than the 1/1. So you have a more reliable shift target for the 8-drop. And again, my opinion, this is where I would be. I would be on 3 of the big Sisus and 3 Be Prepareds. I think if I was going to cut one, I would actually cut one of the Sisus. I'm more of a fan of Be Prepared right now. Now, you do have to be aware against the Emerald decks, the turn 2 Ursula. So, you don't really want either of these in your opening hand regardless. But just be aware the 2-drop Ursula can snag this out of your hand instead of the big Sisu. So 2 Lucky Dimes been the norm for a while. I like the 2-2 split of Lady Tremaine and Madame Medusa. The Lady Tremaine in the mirror match I think is just way too powerful, especially a post board wipe. And Yeah, I think a lot of people are starting to try to play around this big Sisu, but then it's harder. They don't have as wide of boards, and then you can kind of get a good blowout with Lady Tremaine. I'm actually a big fan of the removal spell, the new King Undisputed. I'm a big fan of that card too, and that's actually going to be in one of the lists I would consider for playing this weekend as well. 4 Gramatalas, 4 How Far It'll Go, 4 One Jump Ahead, 4 Fishbone Quell. Just trying to stay consistent, get to the late game, get to the big dragons and the Tamatoas. But yeah, big fan of June's list. June's been doing really well in the new format with it. In my opinion, I think when everything shakes out after Chicago, I think Ruby Sapphire is going to be the most hated deck, most oppressive deck. I think it's more powerful by a long shot compared to the Bucky deck. It's definitely going to be more consistent. You don't have to rely on just having a 2-drop in your hand at all times at the beginning of the game to really pop off. So I think this is the best deck in the format. Maybe a little harder to pilot, more decision trees than the Bucky list. I could be wrong, but that's kind of how I'm feeling at this point in time in the metagame. So moving on, let's take a look at the other most popular deck in the format. And in my opinion, I think this is just kind of a response to the initial oppressiveness of the Green Steel Bucky list that we saw. I mean, I know the first kind of online tournament that we saw, the entire top 8 was the Green Steel Bucky deck. That was kind of the most obvious build. It's not super consistent, I don't think, but it's powerful. It's obviously got really powerful draws. And just playing a deck with 4 Tinkerbells and 3 Grab Your Swords, a little bit of ramp, a little bit of card draw, a little bit of early game removal, fire the cannons, Baboom to have an answer for Diablos. And then for the other item matchups, you've got 3 of I'm a big fan of 5-drop Beast right now. And I'd probably actually even try to get a few binges in here. I really want my opponents to not have that item on turn 3 or 4 for their Flavor Shame to draw 2 cards. So, yeah, I've played a little bit of the Steel Sapphire in this format, and it definitely performed very well against the Bucky deck. Still kind of struggles against the Ruby Sapphire counterpart, but I think you can build it in a way. Maybe the McDuck Manors help. I don't know. I was playing a list with the new Ward Aerial that gains 5 if you have more items, but it's kind of weird with both decks playing Flavor Sham. It's kind of it's a difficult battle to make sure you're going to have more items than your opponent. I mean, this list does play more items by a couple, I think, than some of the Ruby Sapphire decks, but I don't know. It's tough. I think Ruby Sapphire is just a better deck in general. I think confident pilots in Ruby Sapphire are going to not be too afraid of the Bucky matchup, but if your area is just rampant with the Green Steel Bucky deck and you want an easy matchup, go with the Steel Sapphire. I mean, it's pretty easy. I mean, you can still lose, but I mean, if you get to one of these cards down on the board, it's usually game over. So, and then we'll take a look at what my pick would be for this weekend. Yeah, I think not a lot of people are talking about it enough. Maybe they are now. But yeah, I know. It's Ruby Amethyst, blah, blah, blah. It's, the boogeyman for sure in set 2. Set 3, so far the best format in the game. There's so many viable options, so many different decks. But I don't know. I like this version of Ruby Amethyst. I'm a big fan of the 2-drop Flynn Rider. I think it's a really solid card going into the Ruby Sapphire matchup. But I think you have the tools to beat the 2 top dogs in the format. You can kind of go wide and super heavy on lore game with Flynn Rider into Sisu, into the Goat or Queen's Castle, and you could really give Ruby Sapphire some trouble. Brawl is going to be an all-star against both decks, dealing with the Flavor Sham and the Diablo, like we talked about before. I saw a lot of people in the beginning kind of just going all in on Dolores instead of the Merlin Rabbit. I was like, that's crazy. I mean, Rabbit's like a guaranteed card, usually guaranteed 2 cards unless the game ends before it leaves the battlefield. But I do still like the Madrigal. I mean, she's got 2 lures. She does have better stats, right? And she's inkable. You can always ink her. But yeah, I mean, if it's a turn that she's going to trigger her card draw, she's a solid drop on turn 4. And here's what we were talking about before. Big King Undisputed. I'm a big fan of this card. Yeah, I mean, it just kind of catch your opponent off guard. You're going to be able to deal with a character you normally wouldn't be able to deal with, like a Prince John, or possibly you may catch somebody off guard with a Bucky. You got to do some combat trades, and then you played a brawl, and then you sung King Undisputed, and you just end up wiping their whole board. Also, as another answer against Ruby Sapphire, they normally don't have a lot of characters in play at once. Can take care of a Flavor Sham, or once we get to the end of the game, like just one of her 4-drops, like a Rabbit or Dolores singing this to take out a Tamatoa, just be devastating. It'd probably be game ending. So yeah, I like the kind of just non-conventional ways of gaining lore with this deck. You've got the Queen's Castles, you've got the Flynn Riders. I mean, turn 2 Flynn, turn 3 Sisu. You're getting like 4 or 5 lore a turn. You don't need to do that for too many turns to really run away with the game and close it out with rabbits and castles and of the like. This is where I would be. I've been testing this list a bit, been really happy with it. It's just me. It's my style. I wouldn't play one of the top decks in Chicago, but if you've been playing Ruby Sapphire or the Emerald Steel Bucky deck a ton, you got a lot of experience with it, you know your game plans, don't switch. I mean, you know, those decks are both super solid, but I usually try to be a little bit out of the direct target of the metagame, and yeah, I think this is going to end up being one of the top tier decks as well. No surprise, it has been since the game has been out. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the metagame, where we're at right now. What I would play, now the next challenge after Chicago will be the one in Fort Worth. That is my stomping grounds. I live in the DFW area. I'm definitely going to be at that one, and planning on going to hopefully another couple before the end of the year as well. So looking forward to that. But I have a lot of friends going to this event. We've put in a lot of work, done a lot of testing, and if you're going out to Chicago, good luck. Remember, have a good time, stay hydrated, bring snacks, all that good stuff. And don't forget to join the 20 Lore Pro Discord. Still a great resource for deck lists, discussion. You can, ask about card choices of any particular archetypes you've been working on. There's threads with thousands of messages. It's a great resource. I use it every day. Yeah, if you like our videos here, please like and subscribe. Follow along for more. And yeah, good luck this weekend in Chicago. See you next time.